Acts 22. Brothers and fathers, listen to my defense, which I now present to you. When they heard that Paul was addressing them in Aramaic, they became even more quiet. Then he said, I am a Jewish man born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in the city at the feet of Gamaliel, trained strictly according to the Torah of our fathers, being zealous for God, just as all of you are today. I persecuted this way to the death, arresting both men and women and throwing them in prisons. So as the Kohen Gadol and all the council of elders can testify about me, I also received letters from them to the brothers, and I went to Damascus to bring back to Jerusalem even those who were in chains to be punished. But it happened that as I was traveling and drawing near to Damascus about noon, a great light from heaven suddenly flashed all around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? I answered, Who are you, Lord? He said to me, I am Yeshua HaNazareti, whom you are persecuting. Now those who were with me saw the light, but did not understand the voice of the one who was speaking to me. So I said, What shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said to me, Get up and go to Damascus. There you will be told all that you have been appointed to do. But since I could not see because of the brilliance of that light, I was led to the hand by those who were with me and came into Damascus. Then a certain Ananias, a devout man according to the Torah, well spoken of by all the Jewish people living there, came to me. Standing before me, he said to me, Brother Saul, look up. In that very moment I looked and saw him, and he said, The God of our fathers handpicked you to know his will, to see the righteous one, and to hear an utterance from his mouth. For you will be a witness for him, to all the people of what you have seen and heard. Now why are you waiting? Get up and be immersed, and wash away your sins, calling on his name. It happened that when I returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple, I fell into a trance, and I saw him saying to me, Hurry, get out of Jerusalem quickly, because they will not accept your witness about me. And I said, Lord, they themselves know that in one synagogue after another I was imprisoning and beating those trusting in you. Even when the blood of your witness Stephen was spilled, I too was standing by and approving guarding the clothing of those who were killing him. And he said to me, Go, for I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Up to this statement they listened to him. Then they raised their voices, saying, Away from the earth with this fellow, for he's not fit to live. As they were crying out and flinging off their cloaks and throwing dust into the air, the commander ordered Paul to be brought into headquarters. He said Paul should be examined by lashing so that he might find out why they were shouting against him so. But when they stretched him out with straps, Paul said to the centurion standing there, Is it legal for you to scourge a man who is a Roman citizen without due process? Now when the centurion heard this, he went to the commander and reported it, saying, What are you going to do? For this man is Roman. The commander came and said to him, Tell me, are you Roman? And he said, Yes. The commander answered, I bought this citizenship for a large sum. Paul said, But I was born so. Therefore those who were about to interrogate him instantly drew back from him, and the commander also was afraid when he found out that Paul was a Roman and that he had bound him. But on the next day, desiring to know exactly what Paul had been accused by the Judeans, he released him and commanded the ruling Kohanim and all the Sanhedrin to meet together. And he brought Paul and set him before them. Acts 23. Paul, looking intently at the Sanhedrin, said, Brothers, I have lived all my life in good conscience for God up to this day. But the Kohen Gadol Ananias ordered those standing by him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, God is going to strike you on the mouth, you whitewashed wall. Do you sit judging me according to the Torah, and yet in violation of the Torah you order me to be struck? Those standing nearby said, Do you insult God's Kohen Gadol? Paul said, I didn't know, brothers, that he is the Kohen Gadol. For it has been written, You shall speak evil of a ruler of your people. But recognizing that one group was Sadducees and the other was Pharisees, Paul began crying out in the Sanhedrin, Brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of a Pharisee. I am on trial because of the hope of the resurrection of the dead. When he said this, a dispute broke out between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say there is no resurrection or angel or spirit, but the Pharisees affirm them all. Then there was a greater uproar. Some of the Torah scholars of the Pharisees' party stood up and protested sharply, We find nothing wrong with this man. What if a spirit or angel has spoken to him? As a big dispute was developing, the commander was afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces by them. So he ordered the soldiers to go down and take him by force among them and to bring him into headquarters. The following night the Lord stood up behind Paul and said, Take courage, for just as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you also must testify in Rome. When it was day, the Judean leaders formed a conspiracy. They bound themselves by oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. Then there were more than 40 who formed this plot. They went to the ruling Kohanim and elders and said, "We have bound ourselves with a solemn oath to taste nothing until we have killed Paul. So now you and the Sanhedrin serve notice to the commander to bring him down to you, like you are about to investigate his case more thoroughly. But we are ready to kill him before he comes near." But the son of Paul's sister heard of their ambush. He went into the headquarters and told Paul. Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the commander, for he has a message for him." So the centurion took him and led him to the commander and said, "The prisoner Paul called me and asked me to bring this young man to you, as he has something to say to you." The commander took him by the hand, stepped aside, and began asking him privately, "What is it that you have to report to me?" And he said, "The Judean leaders have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the Sanhedrin tomorrow, as if they are about to investigate more thoroughly about him. But do not give in to them, for more than 40 of them have bound themselves by an oath not to eat or drink until they have killed him. Even now they are ready and waiting for your consent." So the commander dismissed the young man, charging him, "Tell no one that you have informed me about these things." Calling 2 of his centurions, he said, "At the 3rd hour of the night, prepare 200 soldiers, along with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen, to proceed as far as Caesarea. Also provide a mount for Paul to ride, so that he might be brought safely to Felix the governor." He wrote a letter to this effect: "Claudius Lysias, to the most excellent governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Judean leaders and was about to be killed by them. When I came on the scene with the soldiers and rescued him, having learned that he is a Roman citizen, desiring to know the charge of which they were accusing him, I brought him down to their Sanhedrin. I found that he was accused concerning issues of their law, but charged with nothing worthy of death or imprisonment. When I was informed that there was a plot against the man, I sent him to you immediately, also ordering his accusers to state before you what they have against him." So the soldiers, in keeping with their orders, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. On the next day they returned to headquarters, leaving the horsemen to go on with him. When they came to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they also presented Paul before him. Upon reading the letter, the governor asked what province he was from. When he learned that Paul was from Cilicia, he said, "I will give you a hearing when your accusers have arrived also." Then he gave orders for Paul to be guarded in Herod's praetorium. Acts 24. After 5 days, the Cohen Gadol and Ananias came down to some of the elders and an attorney named Tertullus. They brought formal charges against Paul before the governor. When Paul was called in, Tertullus began accusing him, saying, "We are enjoying much peace through you, and reforms are introduced for this nation because of your foresight. We acknowledge this, and most excellent Felix, in every way and every place with all gratitude. But in order that I may not weary you any longer, I beg you, in your kindness, to hear us briefly. For we have found this man to be a pest, stirring up riots among all the Jewish people throughout the world, and a ringleader of the secret of the Nazaratim. He even tried to defile the temple, but we seized him. By examining him yourself, you will be able to learn from him all these things about which we accuse him." The Judean leaders also joined in the attack, affirming that these things were true. When the governor nodded for him to speak, Paul responded, "Knowing that you have been judge over this nation for many years, I gladly make my own defense. As you can verify, it is no more than 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship. They did not find me arguing with anyone or inciting a riot, not in the temple or in the synagogues or anywhere else in the city. Nor can they prove to you the charges that they now bring against me. But this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, I worship the God of our fathers, believing everything written in the Torah and the prophets. In God I have a hope, which these men also wait for, that there will surely be a resurrection of both the righteous and the unrighteous. Therefore I do my best always to have a clear conscience before God and men. Now after several years I came to bring tzedakah to my country for the poor, to present offerings. As I was doing this, they found me in the temple, having been purified without any crowd or uproar. But there were some Jewish people from Asia who ought to be here before you to press charges if they have anything against me. Or let these men themselves tell wrongdoing they found when I stood before the Sanhedrin. Except for this one cry, I shouted out while standing among them, 'It is about the resurrection of the dead that today I am on trial before you.' But Felix, having rather extensive knowledge of the way, put them off, saying, When Lysias, the commander, comes down, I will rule in your case." Then he gave the centurion orders for Paul to be kept in custody and yet have some freedom, and not prevent any of his friends from attending to his needs. Now some days later, Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was Jewess. Jewish. He sent for Paul and listened to him speak about faith in Messiah Yeshua. But as he was arguing about righteousness, self-control, and the coming judgment, Felix became afraid and said, "Go away for now. When I find time, I will summon you." At that same time, too, he was hoping that money would be given to him by Paul, so he sent for him frequently and would talk with him. But after 2 years had passed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus, and wishing to do the Judean leaders a favor, Felix left Paul in prison.